Hello, my name is Grace or Motaramu Grace, and here we usually talk about biological cells that make up all living things, along with small organisms that usually require the microscope to look at. And so this is viruses, bacteria, plasmodiums, parasites, all sorts of things. And typically we talk about all of that in relation to daily life. So the way that all of these things affect your daily life. So one thing that is impacting a lot of Kenyans, or that a lot of Kenyans are thinking about, especially in December, is the vaccination drive of January 2025. And so in November, the president of Kenya announced that there's going to be a mass vaccination drive to diminish cases of foot and mouth disease along with other infectious diseases. And so the aim of this was to lead to diminished livestock loss, to increase revenue for farmers, and to increase resources for the country. So this is great. This is fabulous for Kenya. This makes sense in principle. However, there have been some concerns, right? So some people are concerned about the globalist agenda of methane emission reduction, and they're concerned that that is really the why of this vaccination drive. There's some folks that are interested and concerned about climate change and how this could be a measure to kind of sign into this agenda of climate change. Others are concerned about gene editing and the fact that this might be a mechanism by which gene editing resources are introduced into the Kenyan meat market. There are some other concerns that include cost. Who is going to pay for a mass vaccination effort? There are other concerns about priorities. Right now, the economy is really struggling. And so then there's concerns about why these livestock are being prioritized over reconciling and fixing people's economic concerns. There's also an issue of the lack of public participation and also concerns about a rushed timeline. So we can't really speak into really any of these, but one thing that we can do as science educators is really talk about this topic in detail and in depth. So in today's episode on Rĩciria Rĩa Kũguna, what I do is have a conversation with Kimani Waema, who hosts this show, and he asked some questions about the vaccine and what is this vaccine. I don't know what the vaccine is specifically, but what we do is we talk about vaccines in general. How do they work? Why is mass vaccination a strategy? Then we also talk about methane. What is methane? Why does it matter? Are there methane vaccines? What is the likelihood that Kenya is actually going to introduce this trial for a methane vaccine? Again, we don't have any answers, but really we talk through this and we just kind of talk about what data is out there and what is known about all of these topics, and that really frames our conversation. Our aim is not necessarily to come up with an answer because we have none. We are just here on the internet learning and growing and learning how to teach. But what we do want is to kind of help to put these puzzle pieces together about all of these important concepts. And so that's what we're here for. That's what we do here. That is our way of science literacy, and we're hoping that you listen to us and if you have some questions, please leave a question in the comment section and I will do my best to answer it to the best of my ability. And we hope that you take a chance to listen to some of the other topics that are on the channel and leave us some feedback about what you might like to see and what type of content you might be interested in. I should say that many of the conversations here are in the Kikuyu language because I started it because I was interested in learning how to speak that better. And the team usually has conversations in Kikuyu and Kiswahili, and then we blend all that with English. So this is very much a multilingual channel, which we think will reflect the fact that Kenya is a multilingual society. So while there are over 40 different mother tongues, there are many, many people who kind of mix their mother tongue with Kiswahili and English. So we're hoping that today's episode will be accessible to just about everyone. And of course, if you have any questions, again, please leave them in the comments.
Alright, wacha tusikie kama nikiweka earphone kama itakuwa sawa. I think sound inatoka hiyo side yangu. Okay. Wacha sasa niweke hapo. So I think hebu test Grace utuambie kama iko sawa.
Yeah, I think this is. Can you hear me?
Yes, mimi nakusikia vizuri.
Okay, and me I can also hear you, but I don't hear myself again. So I think this is good.
Okay. All right. Now.
Perfect. Okay,
so I think utatupeleka hiyo procedure ndio at least kila mtu akaweze kusoma na watu wakuje wenye wamejoin saizi waendelee kuuliza maswali kuhusu hii mambo ambayo inaendelea ya vaccine, na najua kwamba tutapelekwa kwa ile mutaratara ama kwa ile procedure yenye nafaa ndio at least kila mmoja akaweze kuelewa haya maneno ambayo yanaendelea kuhusu vaccines. Yeah, go on Mutaramu Grace.
Okay, so we like Kimani was saying on Tonyamutu Moyo, we talk about microbes because they impact disease in our daily lives. And then, like Kimani said, the
Yes.
team is me, and then Kimani, Kathy K, and Franco Joki. Last Saturday, we talked
Yes.
about STIs. We focused on the microbes that cause
Yes.
STIs. So that is the way that we teach. We focus on the
Yeah.
microbe, and then we discuss the disease now related to the microbe. So if you haven't seen this image before, I urge you to watch our episode on Saturday. If you want to learn about it in Kikuyu,
Yes.
please watch the episode on Thursday. This upcoming Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, so now our topic today. So I've divided our topic into 5 sections. And please again
Yes.
stop me, Kimani, if you want me to pause, and then audience, if you want me to pause,
Yes.
please stop me at any point. But this is what we
Yes.
want to talk about today. So number one, we will start with a conversation about this presidential memo that was released and the presidential announcement. And then we're going to talk about this idea of mass vaccination. What is mass vaccination? And why are people suspicious? Why are leaders concerned? So if you guys have seen, you've seen several leaders like Honorable Wamuchomba have been concerned about this being a globalist agenda. Honorable Musyoka has been concerned about
Yes.
gene editing. So we're going to talk about why are they concerned. Then we're going to talk about this idea of like methane emissions and climate change. What is methane? What is being reduced? Then we will talk about some of the solutions that have been proposed to minimize methane emissions
Yes.
from animals. Now, this is where
Yeah.
all of the social media conversation comes in, because you've probably seen a lot of conversation about Bill Gates and about animal
Yes.
feed in Britain and about vaccines and all this. So we're going to talk about that. And then
Yes.
hopefully at the end of that, we hope that we can, I don't know that we necessarily can answer for you what is happening in January 2025, but we want you to have the
Yes.
tools and the knowledge, because the goal of Rĩciria Rĩa Kũguna is to think about
Yes.
a topic with evidence and understanding so that you can understand. See, that is correct, Kimani?
True. Yeah. Very
So
true.
we want people to have these tools and this understanding. So again, that's what I plan to talk about today. Please stop me at any point, Hemani or audience, and we just go.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so number one, let us start with the
All right.
presidential memo. So this is from the president's website. So we saw that in November, President Ruto announced a nationwide livestock vaccination. So this was on November 8th is
Yeah.
when it was published kwa website yake, and he said the government will embark on a nationwide livestock vaccination program against diseases in Jan of next year. And he
Yes.
said specifically that 22 million cattle and 50 million goats will be vaccinated. He said that the aim was to prevent animal diseases and therefore secure the international market. He said that the government was trying to scale up environmental conservation efforts. And he also said that the government was going to provide drought-resistant seedlings to boost tree planting in the region. And he also talked about carbon trading. He said that he wants 40% of the proceeds from the carbon market that's generated in all this to go to the community. So those are the kind of key points that he mentioned that are related to
Yes.
our subject today. We are going to, so Tabi, that is exactly what we'll be discussing today. So Tabi asked, why are they vaccinating cows? That is our topic for today. So I hope you stick with us, and I hope that you ask questions as we go. But that is exactly what we
Yeah.
plan to talk about. So Paulo says, here to learn about vaccine, you're in the right place. Joroge James, watching to learn about vaccines, you're in the right place. Okay,
Yeah.
so that is the memo. So now we're on the same
Yeah.
page. So now let us talk about mass vaccination against this foot and mouth. So number one, what is mass vaccination? And number two, why are people suspicious? So
Yeah.
the first thing I want to do is to show you this image, and it's an image that talks about the way that immunity works. And
Yeah.
so what I want to do here is I want to start with this red character. Do you see the red cartoon, blue cartoon,
Yes,
and then a
no.
brown cartoon? Okay, so the red cartoon represents someone that is diseased. The blue cartoon, it represents someone who is susceptible, meaning someone who can get sick. And then the
Yeah.
brown the brown image represents someone who is vaccinated. So now this picture, it shows you 3 situations. Situation number 1 is here where there is no vaccination. So what you see is that there's a bunch of blue people, and then one
Yes.
red person. So there's a diseased person in a group of susceptible people. Susceptible to say
Yeah.
that you can get sick.
Mm.
So if you are now a diseased person, meaning you have you're in red and you're around a susceptible population, a lot of that population will become sick. So what you see is now many of the blue people have become red. Now these are
Yes.
people, but this idea is analogous to now animals. So that's the first situation. If you have a lot of susceptible people that are exposed to someone who is diseased, many of them become diseased.
Mm.
Okay. Situation
Yeah.
number 2. This is where the vaccine coverage is below the threshold for hard protection. So this means that the number of people in the population are not, the number of vaccinated people are not very high. So what you're seeing here is the red diseased person, the sick person from before. Now you see that there is a larger number of people who are vaccinated, meaning how are brown. And then now you see there are some blue people, meaning people who are susceptible. So there are some
Yeah.
vaccinated people, but you see there's still a lot of susceptible people. What does
Yes.
this mean? This means that the susceptible people have a chance still of getting sick from this diseased person. Because even though there are some vaccinated people, it's still not enough to minimize the likelihood of disease spread. So now, position number 3 is when vaccine coverage is above the threshold for hard protection, meaning the number of vaccinated people, meaning the brown characters up. Can you see the brown characters? The brown characters,
Yes.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
them, meaning now you've vaccinated a lot of people at once. So what that means is now the spread of disease, meaning the spread of disease from this red person, it is lower in the population, right? And so then what happens is the high number of vaccinated people protect the susceptible people. And what are susceptible individuals are people who cannot be immunized. These are people maybe who are too young, who are immunocompromised, maybe who have immunodeficiency. So in this process, basically, you protect people that can't be vaccinated and you minimize disease. So this is the idea of mass vaccination, is you're trying to get above a certain number of vaccinated people. You're trying to get to scenario number 3.
Yeah.
So in principle, when the president says we need to vaccinate all of these cows or all of these goats, that is the strategy, is they're trying to increase the number of vaccinated animals against this disease. Right? So that's why
Yeah.
mass vaccination exists. So that's our first question. What is mass vaccination? It's to try and get above this threshold for
Yes.
protection of the community. And it is one of the ways that have been used for a long time to minimize disease spread.
Oh, so before uendelee, I think kuna swali ambao watu wamekuwa
Oh.
wakijiuliza. I think okay, kuna ile rumors ilikuwa inaendelea kuona because pia ile kitu ilikuwa watu wakuwe suspicious. I think kuna watu ambao wamekiuliza na nitaquote venye ambao wamekuwa wakisema ya kwamba even before okay, acha nitumie ile language walikuwa wanatumia because walisema ya kwamba ati hii injection ama hii vaccine ambayo inapewa ng'ombe ama inainjectiwa ng'ombe, it is because of kunyomba. I don't know why that, sijui kwa nini zinainjectiwa. I think that the question that watu waelewi, kwa nini hizi ng'ombe zinainjectiwa than before, kwa sababu hizi ng'ombe walikuwa nasema zimesurvive all those years back, but not why now, why 2025? Is it that kuna breakout ya hii ugonjwa ama ni nini kinaendelea, ama ni nini hiyo wanapunguza? Because I know that watu wako na hiyo swali ya kuuliza ya kwamba why hizi ng'ombe na hizi goats ama hizi wanyama zikuwe injected in 2025. I think that's the question.
I think to answer this question, no Wakajo, okay, I have to return to this image, back to this third scenario. If you remember, this is the image that we talked about the different vaccination scenarios. The reason all of the animals have to be vaccinated is because they're trying, from what I understand, the government is trying to minimize the spread of this infection. So they try to get rid of as much of it as possible, or rather, they try to prepare the cows as much as they can to not get as sick. And in this way, this virus doesn't spread as much. And as for why specifically this has to happen in January of 2025 specifically,
this might be slightly above my pay grade.
Okay, so we've covered mass vaccination, so everyone's on the same page. What I'm trying to do is to make sure we are all on the same page.
Yeah.
Like one
Yeah.
after the other, you know? Because here,
Yes.
Rĩciria, you told me we want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and they have the facts.
Alright. Na pia ningetaka kujua pia kuna watu ambao wanauliza ya kwamba okay, maybe you can elaborate. Sijui kama tu nimeenda mbele ya nimeruka mbele, but I want to understand maybe more about methane, kwa sababu kuna hiyo rumors watu wakisema hii vaccine ina reduce methane, lakini if it is reducing ama ikose kureduciwa, what is methane? And maybe uzuri wake, because if kama inaondolewa there is disadvantage, but if watu wanasema inaondolewa kwa nini, that means that there's advantage of it. So maybe watu waelewi what is methane and kitu kama hiyo, maybe you can tell us about it.
Okay,
Yes.
so now with this business of mass vaccination, why are people suspicious? And like Imani said, why are they saying there has to be another agenda? What is happening? Okay,
Yeah.
so now it's now here. So
Yeah.
there are now some problems because there are 50 million sheep and cows and goats. It's a lot of animals, and they are expensive, sindio? So
Yeah.
there's concerns about cost. Pesa zinatoka wapi? Like, where is the money coming from? Because there are so many other requirements that people have right now. Right now, there are so many other issues. So where is the money coming from? Problem number 2, where was the public participation? Because remember, we were told this in November. We were told that these cows and goats and things are going to be vaccinated in Jan. That's not a lot of time. Where is the public participation? The other question is there's other more pressing priorities because like people have health issues. They are trying to, they have Christmas coming up. There are so many concerns. The economy is hard. People are having trouble finding work. There are so many other problems now before to vaccinate cows, you see. And then again, the rush timeline. So that's why people are frustrated. And then
Yes.
2 leaders have voiced specific concerns. So Honorable Wamuchomba has expressed concerns, exactly like you said, Kimani, about this business of methane, that this is a drug for methane, to reduce methane consumption. And then Honorable Musyoka has expressed concern about gene editing. So today we are going to talk about those details specifically so that people have the facts about these 2 concerns. So I think I've set us up. Now we jump in.
Yes.
Okay, so number 1, what is methane? Why is it being reduced? So this is now your question exactly, Kimani.
Yeah.
So methane is what is called a greenhouse gas. So what is a greenhouse gas? So if you look here on the left, this is before the Industrial Revolution. What happened was, okay, sorry, let me back up. In this picture, what you're looking at is the orange is the sun, and then here you have the earth at the bottom. You see? What happens is that when the sun, the earth reflects light and heat from the sun. And so before the Industrial Revolution, what happened was that this heat would be reflected back into space. And so then that means that the earth and the earth atmosphere would not retain the heat. It would now go back, you see. And but then after the Industrial Revolution and after we started doing a lot of things and generating a lot of waste and products, these greenhouse gases, they increased. And what do greenhouse gases do? They retain heat in the Earth's atmosphere. And that's what you see here on the right. So what happens is the sun reflect onto the Earth. Sorry, it shines onto the Earth. Then the Earth reflects the heat back. And then the greenhouse gases zinashikilia that heat. What is the outcome of this? What this means now is that the heat is retained now in our atmosphere, and it leads now to our environment heating up. And so now to specifically answer swali lako, Kimani, what is methane? Methane is one of these greenhouse gases. And so then, so the idea is that more methane means that the heat is retained more, and then the temperature increases. And that is
Oh.
not great for our planet because our planet requires a certain temperature. The water has to be a certain temperature. The way that we live requires a certain temperature and a certain environment. So if that heats up, tunashida.
Oh.
So that's what it is. So then,
All right.
swali lako la pili ni, where does it come from? And so now here, this is a diagram from this place called
Yes.
the carbon tracker. And they tell us where the methane comes from. So about 35% is anthropogenic, meaning it comes from humans and microbes. And so that's why you see, or human activities. So that's how you see here livestock, where the arrow is. Solid and liquid waste is another piece. And then rice farming. That is the human-caused methane. That's about 35%. And then another piece is this 30% that is caused by fossil fuel. Here, that's blue. And now this means coal, oil and gas, those type of resources. Now that's 30%. The other 30% is from natural microbial sources. Because one thing we always say here on Tonyamotwe Moyo is we say
Yes.
how microbes are everywhere, right? So if they're everywhere,
yeah.
that means they're working everywhere, they're living everywhere. And one of the products is methane. So the total number of the total impact of microbial methane is about 30%. And this comes from the wetlands and also from animals, like wild animals. And then
Yes.
the last 5% is from burning things. So this is biofuel burning or even biomass burning. That's about 5%.
Yeah.
So that's where methane comes from. Any questions?
Oh, I think sasa hapo tumeweza kuelewa, pia watazamaji wetu wanauliza wanasema iko sawa. So I think we
Okay.
can go on. Na pia okay, so hii mambo ya methane, at least tumeweza kuelewa methane ni nini. And okay, kuna watu venye hawaelewe, ni vizuri. Unajua sometimes hii topic inakuanga ngumu sometimes, hata pia kwa watu venye wako pale kwa ground, unajua wanataka kwenda na kuflow nayo vizuri. So issue hapa ni hii vaccine inahusika aje na methane? Tafadhali. I think that question is good.
That's the question that's guiding us. But like I said, remember, I'm a teacher, so my job is to make sure we're all at the same level. Because we come from different levels, right? So we need to make sure everyone's on the same level. Okay, so we've talked about all of that. How do cattle? So we've talked about how cattle, they are some of, or livestock are some of the sources of methane. Oh, sorry, I also should say, hi, Anne Lynette Mwangi, welcome. It says, I really named this topic to understand more about the vaccine, why it's important. We are about to fix that exactly. Okay, so livestock is a big source of this methane. Where is this methane being made? So the way that cattle make methane is in the rumen, meaning their stomach. So cattle have a really, really complex stomach. It has many, many pieces and many, many, many microbes that live there. And it is such an interesting place. So what's interesting about now this stomach is it has some microbes. And these microbes, as part of their job, they make methane. So you see, it's not the cow itself, it's the microbes that are inside the stomach. When they are trying to break down the plant material, they make methane. So that's where this methane comes from. It's from the microbes that are inside the stomach of the cows. And so now, we've now reached, I think, where everyone wants to be. So why do they need? So now what is happening now with all of these injections? So now the strategy is people want to minimize the methane emission from animals. And there are different strategies. So this is what you've been seeing discussion of on social media, is people they are talking about these different methods. So the first method you have probably seen on social media is this business, which I think, Imani, you've seen this. There's a company
Yes, I've seen that.
that is giving cows feed that has this compound. And what this compound does is that it binds to a protein that's inside these microbes. And that protein is the one that's responsible for that's one of the steps of making methane. So this compound that you've been reading about, it is called 3-NOP, it is
Mhm.
eaten by the cows, and then once the cows eat it, they reduce their methane production. So I have here a plot from one of the papers about this. So on this axis, on the vertical axis, what you see is the methane emission, and then on the horizontal axis, what you see are the hours post feed. So here, if you look at the top graph, the one with the full circles, you see that the amount of methane, it increases and then it drops throughout the day. But here down below, in the open circle and in the triangles, those are conditions where the methane has the cows have been given this compound that reduces methane. So what I'm trying to say is that they give the cows this feed and it decreases the methane. And usually in these experiments, they also show you that the hydrogen increases. So that's what is in this bottom graph.
Yeah.
The bottom part is the control, meaning the cows that have been given regular feed. And then the next, the other diagram here is the cows that have been given feed in different amounts with this compound, and what you see is the hydrogen goes up. So the purpose of this graph is just to show you that these cows are given this feed that drops the methane. So if you've been reading a lot about feed that decreases
Yes.
methane, this is the feed. This is what it's trying to do.
All right.
The people,
Okay, now understand.
the people that are doing this, it's a company called Bovaer, and they are from I believe somewhere in Denmark, if I'm not wrong, and they have different trials
Yes.
around the world. What you notice is that they don't have trials in Africa. So people have been concerned. They're saying,
Yeah.
"Hiya, does this mean that the vaccine, this vaccine of 2025, is this trial?" We don't know that, but what I can tell you is that this Bovaer product, it's in animal feed and not necessarily an injection. So I don't know that that's necessarily related. That's the first point.